Hi, so is my final discovery project, Capstone project of Art History 2710. What I did is I took a previous class that I had created and did some revisions to sort of correlate with more art history. This class that I taught is called Comparative Mythology. It's a comparative mythology course. And I taught it to an age group that had a pretty wide range from about ages 9 to 15, but it was predominantly around the 12 to 14 or maybe even 10 to 14 age group. It was a homeschool course. I was hoping to teach it at a Commonwealth, but I had to teach it out of my home instead, which was just fine, and it was actually really fun. It got really creative and really engaging, but I was hoping that when I revised it, I could maybe add a little bit more depth, a little bit more culture to my lessons, so that's what I did. So the original lessons were pretty simple. How I teach is I make a slideshow either on PowerPoint or Google Slides where I just kind of make pages that show different things and that kind of tell me, they kind of act as cue cards for what I'm about to talk about next. I'm a bit of an improviser, but looking back, it's been so long since I've reviewed these. It's been a year. I taught this class in spring 2025, so I was preparing it in December of 2024. So it's been a year since I've looked at this stuff, and I don't even remember what some of my cues were. So a lot of this I'm kind of having to remember from scratch. So we're going to start. We're going to look at each lesson in the revision. So this was the original lesson 1, an introduction to the class. And I remember this day when I taught it. Most of it was getting to know you games and things like that. But I did go over what would be studying. So comparative mythology is a subject that takes stories and cultures from around the world and sees what aspects that these stories have in common. And it's really interesting to see the common themes that exist in cultures that have never even made contact with each other. And and I saw a lot of that in art as well. So hopefully we'll be looking at some of this. So this was the original lesson. I had some cue slides. Again, I don't remember what this means. I added funny videos in the middle, and as well as educational videos. I took all the silly videos out of the revised ones just so that these lessons can be more consecutive. That doesn't mean that in the future I won't show funny videos. It's just easier to make this more of a curriculum because the funny videos shouldn't have to be required. So I used pretty much the same format, didn't do much to change those for the different ones. And I wish I got time to replace or at least track down some of these images, like this clip art, so that I could find a credit to it, but I did not have time. So a lot of this is the same. First couple slides are the same. Talk about archetypes, tropes, and cliches. Those are some of our vocabulary words. Archetype is one of the primary things we talk about. It's discussed in this video. It's kind of a philosophical term that reflects different personality types, but it can also refer different things we see in myths, like characters and events. And as well as archetypes can exist in art when we see common motifs and similar things with art. So this video talks a lot about how those are made and why we have similar ones across mythology. One example that this video gave was monsters that are known to turn people into stone, like Medusa most famously, and there's also another one called the Basilisk. So it was really hard to add art history to lesson 1, so I was kind of trying to find ways I could add that in. I have a lot more in some of the other ones that I did. I did lessons 1 through 3 to start off, but this is an image that's supposedly Medusa, maybe a Gorgon, a different Gorgon, similar, but they are known as mythical beings to turn men to stone. And then this is a basilisk. I know that Gorgons are Greek. Basilisks may originate from Greek mythology as well, but not in the same way Gorgons are. It's kind of interesting. So I'm gonna move that down, it's bugging me. But Gorgons are interesting. Well, the thing interesting about these monsters is when you see them, you turn to stone, and there's more of them just outside Greco-Roman mythology that I was unable to find, but it's a common enough trait in monsters to have this ability to turn people to stone or to freeze people. And the reason for that is a human trait, the fight, flight, freeze response, where when you're scared, you'll have either an urge to fight or to run away, but before you do make that decision, you freeze in the moment. And so if you're approached by a terrifying monster, or you see someone in your company who's being approached by a terrifying monster and they freeze, it looks as if they turn to stone when they are really just sort of frozen because they are scared. And that could be a very likely reason for why these monsters are known for doing this, which is something really cool. I have another video that kind of goes over myths. I talked about types of archetypes again, how archetypes are more than just character traits. I mean, when you hear archetype, it usually refers to like these Jungian archetypes, this kind of new age spirituality type of thing, but which is where it originates. Carl Jung and other philosophers who, psychologists who did a lot, who studied mythology to try to understand, the human psyche, but I don't know how into that I am. I do think that there is a connection between human nature and how these myths are made, and I really want to go into that in this. So here are some types of archetypes have events and objects, like here. Like I have a resurrected Jesus artwork, more art I added in, because resurrections and redemptions happen a lot. This is like the dwarves crafting different objects, like the gifts they made for the gods, like Mjolnir and the magic spear, Odin's magic spear, and yeah, different stuff. I think you can see that all in here. There's also like this boat that I remember like folds up, and maybe a golden pig. I think like a lot of different things, but it's not uncommon to see similar objects like magical weapons or sacred artifacts or special vehicles even show up in multiple myths. Like, it's not exclusive to Norse mythology. It shows up all over the world, but not everybody knew the Vikings or knew their myths, so why are these myths the same? And then on my final slide, I just discussed the overall project of the course. One of the things that we decided in this course is that the kids' main homework, their main assignment, would be called the Mythopoeia project, where they'd create their own mythology using world building and fantasy writing techniques. And that was really fun to see them progress on that. And on certain days I taught lessons, I had them do things that match with the lessons. So when we did our creation myth day, they wrote their own creation myth and stuff like that. So moving on to lesson 2, So the original, I added this astrology video because the kids were really curious about this stuff in the old one because I wasn't able to go into depth in it. A lot of these lessons are designed for a shorter time period. I think if I want to teach this in the future, I'd like a longer time frame. I'm not for sure how long I had it, but it wasn't long at all. So the second lesson is called archetypal events, and again, I'm not happy with like how I formatted things. You can kind of look down here. I had a bunch of memes and stuff, and again, these cue cards, which I kind of understand them, but I'm not sure what I actually talked about when I taught this lesson, because a lot of these I prepared right before I was teaching, so I knew what I was talking about, like the memes, yeah. So, but this new one I feel like is more complete. They're still the same things, like I use a lot of the same videos because I really like them, and I feel like a lot of the kids learn well from the videos. Having multiple teaching styles really helps. And so here's this one. This one's archetypal events. I talked about how in the earlier one, over here, characters, events, objects, and there might be more. I just haven't really thought of them yet, but I think those are the primary ones. So events. So this one I start with kind of like an overview. I added this in, and talking about how these cultures never make contact with each other, and there's so many myths where the same story beats happen, the same plot points, the same events. It's kind of interesting. I have the same video. This one talks about flood stories in the Near East. It doesn't. What's interesting about it is you see like this guy here. It looks like Noah, but this story doesn't talk about Noah. It talks about Noah, but it also talks about Gilgamesh and I think Deucalion, and they're kind of like all similar figures who do similar things. These flood stories happen a lot. There's like 3 or maybe 4 of them when there's a great flood, and the guy knew about the flood, so he built a big ark and it was to protect people from the flood. And those are all very common in the Near East. Not so much the rest of the world, but in the Near East, these cultures were more likely to make contact to each other. So that's one of the reasons. I list some reasons because I want these kind of questions in my lessons for the students to kind of question and come up with theories and think like that. So think curiously, think critically, like what are some theories? The area was prone to flooding. It's kind of a deserty area where rainfall was kind of unpredictable, and there wasn't a lot of place for water to go when rivers flooded, when rivers filled up. So when a river flooded, it would just flood everywhere. This could reflect an actual great flood. We wouldn't know for sure, but natural disasters do happen, and there are a lot of records showing it. It was a long time ago, but there's still a possibility, and this story is real to many people. This could be reflecting different floods that happen in different regions, and all the myths do tend to correlate with the divine, like there was some divine warning. The flood usually acts as a divine punishment to wash away the evils of the world. It's kind of a common theme, which is really interesting. And again, our question is, did these stories evolve separately, or did one culture tell the other culture this myth? Like, did the Hebrews share it with the Greeks, and did the Greeks share it with the Babylonians? Probably not in that order, but still, it would probably be the Babylonians first, timeline-wise, but still, there could have been a bit of that. There could have also been just sort of this common thing that developed. We wouldn't know. And I like how it's shrouded in mystery. It makes it interesting to me. So we focus a lot on this one, but I'm talking about other archetypal events and motifs and things like that. Here I'm talking more about objects. In this one here I talk about fruits of immortality, because in Norse mythology, when the gods start aging, they're immortal, but they start aging. They lose their youth. Loki goes, tricks Idun into giving him her apples, which are, supposed to give you eternal youth. And he takes those, takes them back to the gods, and that's how the gods stay young forever. A similar thing happens in the story Journey to the West with Sun Wukong, the Monkey King, where he steals peaches for immortality, magic peaches from the peach tree, and I do believe he gets severely punished for it. But it's interesting that it's a common thing, because you think up in middle-aged Scandinavia and middle-aged, not from the middle-aged type of time period, and China, there's hardly any chance that these cultures even talked to each other, even knew. I mean, I don't even know if they could have known each other existed. There might have been some, but the chances of these myths spreading is very unlikely. But these stories are so similar. They both involve stealing a fruit, and this fruit has the power to grant an immortal life or eternal youth to whoever eats it. It's interesting why those are the same. And other things too. Fire thieves is a common event that happens in a few cultures. So this is the Shoshone myth of coyotes stealing fire and bringing it to humans, which is, and then there's the probably most well-known one of Prometheus stealing fire to give to humans, and another one where Maui from Polynesian mythology steals fire to give to humans. And in most of these stories, the thief is punished or something like that for what they've done. And we're just going to talk about how why they did that, and why was it fire? Why was fire the thing that was stolen? Well, probably because you need fire for warmth, for food, for survival, and it's something that feels dangerous for humans to harness. It doesn't make sense for humans to have fire, so it probably came from something divine. I mean, it glows, it burns, it's like alive. There's something that seems very magical about it, so it actually makes a lot of sense why a trickster or kind of unsung hero would try to defy the gods to steal this element to give to humans, which is really neat. Another video where these people talk about a lot more examples. It's really good. And then I have other lists of these motifs that keep showing up, where a lot of myths revolve around them, like natural disasters, food, water, revenge, honor, romance, money, fear, and hubris. Fear was seen, with the turning into stone. A lot of stories are about food. Food is essential. There's so many stories where there's you're stealing food or selling food or using food in some way, because it's a common human thing, and it's things that all humans have in common that kind of form these similar events that happen in myths. Every human being, regardless of what culture you're in, needs food, they need water, they need safety, they want power, they want honor, they want respect. They're scared. It's just human connection, and that anthropology element is really neat to me. So the next lesson I'm going to talk about is the creation myths lesson, which is lesson 3, where we go really in depth on kind of our first main subject. The rest of these lessons, besides the first 2, focus on specific subjects. Some talk about creation myths, some are animal stories, underworld stories, trickster stories, father stories, stuff like that. So again, I have another crash course video because I like their videos. This one, again, like the more memes and kind of cue cards, like I think with like the Hades picture, I talked about the Hadean Eon, how that's a time period from like, you know, ancient geology, prehistoric times. It's like kind of the first known era or something. The Christian creation story, and that is something my audience would be more familiar with, especially in a homeschool community. There is a large Christian majority. Not all my students were Christian, but many of them were, so it's something that they would kind of be more connected to, and it is a well recorded and very often retold story that's kind of easy to understand. We read a book which was actually really fun, reading out of the Dualer's Greek myth and Norse myth stories. Both of those, they kind of go through those mythologies. They're also pretty kid friendly, so it was fun to do that. This is a mural in my local library that shows the Paiute creation myth that we looked at. Again, something a little bit more local, like the Shoshone one with the coyote who stealed fire. And I talked about their world building rules for their own creation myth, which was a lesson, and then another funny video. Now I'm going to look at what was revised for lesson 3, creation myths, and what I added in. So I still kept that video, still kept the reading. I added some more. I added some art. So art that depicts creation myths isn't super common, which was interesting to me. In fact, a lot of these myths aren't recorded in art, but recorded in literature and orally. They're recorded in a ton of different styles. But what is in art is kind of interesting to look at. And some seem to be recorded right as these myths surface, while others were made thousands of years later, like this painting by Michelangelo, the famous Creation of Adam, which depicts the Christian creation of man, but it was painted thousands of years after the book of Genesis even told the creation story. And then this other one is supposedly a sunrise at creation, kind of the first sunrise where the gods kind of made the world. And so we're seeing some really cool common themes. Again, I have this picture and then the same requirement. So this one probably had the least amount of changes, but I really like that I was able to add art, and I really hope to add more to kind of give the kids an understanding of how we know about these myths, because sometimes we'll just look up on a website what's the mythology of this place and accept it as true, when we have so many retellings and variations, and the original source is has things that have gone missing, and we don't always get the full story, or the full story wasn't written down. So I think it's super important to learn these things, because it's a very great understanding of humanity and how we as humans see the world and will continue seeing the world. I'm really happy with what I did here, and I'm excited to teach this course again, hopefully next fall, and because I still have a lot of revisions and improvements to do and need a lot more time than just what's left in the year. But I did have a lot of fun reviewing and kind of reimagining this from an artistic perspective. So yeah,